the drive. Tatum the finish. It is banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
So it's 2 losses in a row here for the Celtics. They've only played 2 games in the last 11 days, and it's been a little bit of a tough stretch here, having a kind of lackluster game against the Milwaukee Bucks on Thursday, and then following that up with a pretty tough loss. They battled hard, they played pretty well, but they just didn't make enough shots. Jaylen Brown leaves 7 free throws on the table. Pistons are a really good basketball team. Cade Cunningham, one of the best players in the Eastern Conference right now, and the Pistons are 21-5 and have the best record in the league, in the Eastern Conference. And so you look at all that and you wonder, is this Celtics team, are their heads down after this loss, or is this the kind of game that you can kind of just chalk up to you played the best team in the league and you didn't make enough plays to win? My big feeling leaving this one is that this is not the kind of loss that you are overly concerned about, that you are overly hard on yourself. You do go back and you look at the plays that you left on the table, a couple of uncharacteristic turnovers, a couple of missed rebounds that I do think they had pretty good positioning and a pretty good chance to secure. And at the same time, you played against a really good basketball team and you just didn't make enough plays, and that's what happens over the course of an 82-game season. So they are games where I think when it's all said and done and they're battling for positioning in the playoff race, you're going to go back and you're going to look at the Brooklyn Nets loss. You're going to look back at the Utah Jazz loss. Even this most recent game on the road against Milwaukee. Like, those are the kinds of games you are not going to be happy with the outcome. Against Detroit, you've now played them 3 times. All 3 games have gone down to the wire. And for the most part, I like how they've competed against a team that has looked pretty formidable night in and night out, and also against a team that has been really, really effective in the clutch. And Joe Mazzulla brought it up pregame that Detroit is now 11-0 in clutch time games. And so they have that chemistry, that group's played together for a long time, and they find ways to win. So you look at this team and you look at this game and you say, okay, what are the positive things that you can draw from it? For me, without a doubt, the biggest thing that stands out is the play of Derrick White, who had some big-time defensive plays, as he always does, but also looked like the kind of offensive player that I expected him to be entering the season. And I, like many other people, had sky-high expectations for Derrick White this season. I really thought that he was going to be able to kind of make a step into an all-star caliber player, be a number 2 scoring option. And at times that's been accurate, but at other times he just hasn't really been that offensive player. And you look at his shooting numbers, both from 3-point range, but also from 2-point range to the rim, mid-range, like really everything. And he's taken a step back from last season and the last couple seasons. And it's not even necessarily a shot quality issue. He's always had tough shot quality. So I think it was just kind of a shooting slump. And the tides began to turn a couple of weeks ago, and it hasn't been perfect since they have, because that's the nature of this sport, is that just because you're beginning to trend out of a slump doesn't mean that all your problems are resolved. But that being said, in this game, he has 31 points. He's 10 of 18 from the field, 5 of 12 from 3. It was funny because the ones that he missed, he did have a couple air balls, which he pointed out to me. I asked him about his shooting post-game. Here's what he had to say.
Jaylen and Joe both seemed to say that you guys met the physicality of this game. Did you feel that way? And did you feel like sometimes you just have to accept that some losses just happen? Or as a competitor, do you never really accept that?
Yeah. Obviously you want to win every game, but that's kind of unrealistic. And like I said, they're a really good team, and they make plays and they do a lot of things to challenge their opponents. So obviously there's things we're going to watch film about and want to get better and improve with, but the physicality and that mentality and mindset, I think we did a really good job with tonight.
But for the most part, you can see that he's playing with a level of confidence with the shots that he's hunting, with his decision-making, and that's the level that they're going to need from him to win basketball games. And tonight it wasn't enough, but you look at Jaylen Brown, we'll talk about it in a moment, you look at Derrick White, they combined for 65 points in this one. In general, that should be a really good indicator for where this team is offensively, but they only score 105, so those guys really shouldered the load offensively, which just wasn't enough. But in general, that should be good for this group, right? And so I was really encouraged by Derrick's performance. I have been encouraged by his defensive performance. He's been top 10 in blocks and steals combined all season long. He's been one of the elite guard defenders, elite help side defender, and he's really thrived in this defensive system that the Celtics have been playing this season. But right now, he's not, they need more from him than just role player contributions. And I thought there was a couple of big moments in that fourth quarter, the and one drive, a couple of big threes, one on an Anthony Simons extra pass kick out that was just awesome. Crowd went crazy. The Derrick White looked like the Derrick White that we have seen be like that all-star caliber player. And he's not going to be an all-star this year, I don't think. I think that the shooting slump is going to be too much to overcome. But tonight he looked like an all-star. Tonight he looked like a number 2 option. He looked like a guy, a closer, right? He was like fourth quarter Derrick White. We've seen him a couple times, especially in this building this season, where he kind of comes alive in that fourth quarter. And he did it again tonight. I think he had 25 of his points in that second half. So really came alive when they really needed him most. And this team got cold from 3. Like he was the one guy that could shoot from the outside, and so it was crucial. And so building off of that for next game, they're facing Miami here in the same place on Friday night. They have Toronto coming up this weekend as well. Those are going to be big-time games. Those are going to be games that are going to decide if this team remains a top 3 seed or if they're going to plummet all the way down to the 9th seed, because right now it's a 1.5 game difference between number 3 and number 9. And that's, I think, going to be the case all season long for this Eastern Conference that doesn't seem to have a lot of separation outside of the Detroit Pistons and outside of the New York Knicks. So that's kind of where I'm at with this group, and this, I think it's going to be a lot of back and forth in the standings, and they're going to need Derrick to be at his best all year for them to have the best chance possible. And tonight I think you saw the best version of Derrick White. He wasn't perfect. He'll point out the turnovers. He had 4 in this one. Taking care of the ball has been a strong suit of his and Peyton Pritchard's all season long, and I think he had a couple of out-of-character ones tonight, but for the most part you can see that the confidence is there, and he's kind of playing that free-flowed basketball that Derrick White is at his best when he plays. So that's number 1. Number 2, you can't talk about this game and you can't talk about the season without talking about Jaylen Brown, who was actually very hard on himself after this one. Jaylen finishes this game with 34 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. He was efficient from the field, but he was just 7 of 14 from the line, which I think was one of the reasons why he was frustrated, because they lose this game by 7, and he does get to the line 14 times, which is really good, and it's where he wants to be, and he wants to draw contact, and he also wants to be established as a guy who gets those calls, and I think that's been trending upwards in recent weeks. But he leaves 7 on the line. He also has a couple of tough misses down the stretch. I think with the Isaiah Stewart stuff, like he has, I think it was the third quarter where him and Isaiah Stewart tried to go at it. And he had a couple of drives afterwards that seemed to maybe a little bit out of control, or like maybe he was trying to go at Isaiah Stewart. But at the end of the day, I thought this was a really good Jaylen Brown game. And honestly, if he not been so hard on himself after this game, I probably wouldn't even be thinking so much about the things that he didn't do well, because he did enough for them, right? 34 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists. Should have had more assists. Like, he had some great playmaking moments in this one where he drew 2 or even 3, and then the defense collapsed on him, and he kicked it out to the next guy. So I really like this game from Jaylen. I like the way that he's been able to kind of consistently put up these kinds of numbers. A big theme for the Celtics team is consistency, right? Who can do it every single night? And I'm a big fan of Derrick White and Peyton Pritchard's games. I think they both have the potential to be all-star caliber players. I think they both have the potential to be great players. I think they have both been great players at times. Their knock this season has been their consistency, right? They haven't done it every single night. To me, right now, Jaylen Brown has been the face of consistency for this basketball team. If nothing else, you know what you're getting out of Jaylen. And I don't think that should be taken for granted. I think that's really, really hard to achieve. There's a very elite, limited group of players in the NBA that you get a 30-plus point night on high efficiency, plus the boards, plus the playmaking, plus everything else. You have to get 3 blocks in this one every single night. And Jaylen really hasn't had off nights. I think the one game that he hasn't eclipsed 30 points recently was like the Brooklyn Nets, the Cleveland Cavaliers triple-double. Like, this has just been a classic Jaylen Brown game, to the point where he's sitting at the podium and he's like super bummed out at how he performed, because his expectation for himself is so high. Derrick White talked about it post-game, but he said that's what makes him special. That's why we love playing with him, that he is so hard on himself. He does shoulder this immense responsibility, and I think he's really embraced the challenge. He's embraced the fact that he is the leader of this team. He's the number 1 option. He has a really high usage rate. He's been top 5 in usage all season long. And tonight he felt like he didn't make enough plays. Specifically, he didn't make enough mindset plays where he bit on a pump fake. I think that Tobias Harris got to the line down the stretch there. So he's his own toughest critic. That's what Derrick White said. That's pretty clear as someone who covers him. But you don't want to overlook the consistency, because, again, big picture here, Jason Tatum comes back this season, or even forget this season, you look at next season, this version of Jaylen Brown that is so consistent, that has found ways to impact the game, even when he's not shooting the ball well from 3, even when he wasn't shooting well from the line, like, he has just been playing at a really, really high level as far as how he's reading and processing the game. Probably my number 1 takeaway from this season, honestly, is that Jaylen Brown has just figured out basketball. And I feel like I felt this way about Jason Tatum maybe last year or the year prior, where it just feels like the game slowed down. He figured out how to make the right reads, and when that happens, it's just so hard to stop these already really talented players. Jaylen Brown is one of those guys, and it's not like he hasn't done this before. I mean, this is a guy who's been second-team All-NBA Finals MVP, but he is playing the best basketball of his career, and it's been really impressive to watch, especially because he has so much defensive attention on him, and it was an open question of how he was going to be able to handle that responsibility. I just want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at Prize Picks.
You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of the season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. I attended finally my first football game. It was a great win, great Patriots win. A lot of fun to watch football in person and start to kind of get acclimated to that sport. And I was very impressed by what I saw. Drake May in particular, which you can pick more for him on rushing touchdowns, and passing yards. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Prize Picks puts their users first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right.
So you got a whole lot out of Jaylen Brown, you got a whole lot out of Derrick White, and yet it wasn't enough because if you look down the roster, Anthony Simons is 3 of 9 from the field. Jordan Walsh plays just 17 minutes, which was definitely low for him considering how much he's played in recent weeks as the starting forward for this team. Sam Hauser goes out with after just 4 minutes of play. He looks like he sprained his ankle. Celtics listed him as questionable to return. He never does return. Honestly, an underrated loss for them. He is somebody that I know sometimes can be a little bit maligned by fans because he hasn't been shooting the ball well. He's 34% from 3 on the season this year. And I think there's things that he can't do athletically that guys like Josh and Jordan and Ugo can do. But honestly, they missed him out there. They missed what he's been able to do from a offensive execution standpoint. And as a defender, he is somebody that can defend without fouling at a really high level. And so they could have used him a little bit down the stretch to eat those minutes. I mean, 4 minutes for him tonight. He's been averaging around 22 this season. TBD on whether that's something that keeps him out much longer. I don't think it's a terrible ankle sprain. He was able to kind of play through it a couple of possessions. He walked off on his own accord. He was questionable, not out to come back to this game. So maybe he misses a couple of games here. It doesn't seem like a long-term concern, but something to note. But you didn't get a lot from the bench. I think they combined for like 14 points in this one, whereas the Pistons bench gave you a whole lot more. That was kind of the X factor here. Peyton Pritchard starts off really hot. I think he was 4 or 5 to start this game. He cools off quite a bit and even airballs a big 3 down, in that final possession that would have cut the deficit to 2 points. That was kind of game right there. So he just didn't get enough from the rest of the roster. That was an open question. The one last positive takeaway that I'll say is they were +5 in Amish Keita's 34 minutes, and that continues to be the name of the game for the Celtics team, that when he's on the floor, this is a positive basketball team, even against the Detroit Pistons, even against Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham. When he was on the floor today, they outscored their opponent. And he wasn't the only one. They outscored their opponents. I think when Ugo was a +9, that was team high. And he even made a couple mistakes, but even still, that was a good ± for him. But I'm continuing to monitor Keita's development. I thought from a physicality standpoint, he really brought it. I thought he did a good job on Jalen Duren. I would like to see him get more touches offensively. I'd like to see him be a little bit more aggressive there, especially on a night like tonight where points were hard to come by from everybody not named Jaylen Brown and Derrick White. But I continue to be overall impressed because, again, early this season we were talking about Amish Keita, but he's doing it against the Wizards or he's doing it against these kind of lower quality opponents. To be able to kind of hold his own against Jalen Duren, who's probably going to be an all-star this season, against one of the best front courts in the league, it deserves a little shout-out here. So we've kind of grown to take his consistency for granted, or just the way he's been able to anchor this team. And I don't think he's a finished product. I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know if the best version of his team needs him to come off the bench or if he can be a starting center. The jury's still out on it, from my opinion. I know some people have strong thoughts in both directions, but for this basketball team, he's been what they've needed so far. So you have to be impressed with what he's been able to do. The only thing is I wish he could play all 48 minutes because they're just much better with him on the floor. But those are kind of my big picture takeaways from this one. I don't think there's anything to freak out about. Again, this is a Detroit team that has been beating everybody. They find ways to stay in it. They find ways to win. They push the pace. They play aggressive. They're a physical team. They battle. They instigate. They get under your skin. They had a couple of those moments tonight. And for the most part, I think the Celtics did meet their call and respond with the physicality needed to stay in this game. And sometimes the difference between a 5-point win and a 5-point loss is just a couple of plays. And I have those plays at the top of my mind. I can think about the defensive rebounds they've missed. I can think about a couple of bad turnovers. I think Jordan Walsh passed to Jaylen Brown and was just out of bounds. Like, those are the kinds of moments that you think about after a loss like tonight. So we'll see how they bounce back. That's what really is going to be the indicator for how this team responds. But overall, again, another game where you're pulling the big stuff out of it, and that's Derrick White playing at this level, and Jaylen Brown continues to look like a first-team All-NBA player. So we'll see if that can hold, but so far so good on that. We'll be back with more coverage soon here Friday night against Miami. You can check out Jaylen Brown's full post-game comments, Derrick White's full post-game comments, as well as Joe Mazzulla's, all of whom have their own take on kind of what went wrong against this one. That's it for now. Thanks as always for watching. Let me know what you think about this one in the comment section. What went wrong, what went right, any positive takeaways that I missed from this one, let me know, and we'll be back with some more content soon.